What's the dumbest reason you've been written up in school for? I kept passing out in Mrs. Brewer's chemistry class, and she was convinced I was doing it on purpose. The first time it happened, I was taking notes about molecular bonds when everything went fuzzy, and the next thing I knew, my face was pressed against the cold lab table. My lab partner, River, was shaking my shoulder, and everyone was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Mrs. Brewer marched over with her lips pressed into a thin line. She was one of those teachers who wore the same cardigan every day and smelled like coffee mixed with chalk dust. She looked down at me with pure disgust and said I needed to stop disrupting her class with my attention-seeking behavior. I tried to explain that I didn't mean to fall asleep, but she was already writing me up for insubordination. The second time happened during a quiz. I was halfway through question 3 when the room started spinning like I was on a broken carnival ride. My pencil rolled off the desk as I slumped forward and knocked over my water bottle. The crash made everyone jump, and Mrs. Brewer actually threw her dry erase marker at the wall. She sent me to the principal's office with another write-up that said I was deliberately sabotaging assessment periods. My mom had to come pick me up that day, and she was furious. Not at me, but at the school for not taking this seriously. She'd been telling me to eat more red meat and spinach lately because I looked pale all the time. We made a doctor's appointment for the following week, but Mrs. Brewer had already decided I was her problem student. She moved my seat to the front row so she could keep an eye on my antics. The third incident was the worst. We were doing a lab experiment with Bunsen burners, and I was measuring chemicals when the familiar dizzy feeling hit. I tried to steady myself against the table, but my knees buckled and I went down hard. My elbow knocked over a beaker on the way down, and glass shattered everywhere. River jumped back so fast he crashed into another table and knocked over more equipment. Mrs. Brewer completely lost it. She started yelling about how I was a safety hazard and a liability to other students. She said I clearly had no respect for education or laboratory equipment. While I was still on the floor trying to figure out which way was up, she wrote out a suspension slip. She made me sit in the hallway until security could escort me out like I was some kind of criminal. The doctor finally ran blood tests that week and discovered I had severe iron deficiency anemia. My body literally wasn't making enough red blood cells to carry oxygen to my brain. No wonder I kept passing out when I had to stand for long periods or concentrate hard. The doctor wrote a note explaining my medical condition and recommended I be allowed to sit during labs and have extra time on tests. When I came back to school with my doctor's note, Mrs. Brewer rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might fall out. She snatched the paper and said, "How convenient that you suddenly have a medical excuse." She made air quotes around the word medical like I'd forged the whole thing. She told me I still had to make up all the work I'd missed, including staying after school to redo the lab I'd destroyed. During my makeup lab session, I noticed Mrs. Brewer acting strange. She kept going to her desk drawer and taking sips from a metal water bottle that she immediately locked away. Her hands were shaking slightly as she graded papers, and she kept rubbing her temples. She snapped at me twice for measurements that were actually correct, and had to keep checking her answer key. 2 weeks later, I was taking notes when I heard a massive crash from the front of the room. Mrs. Brewer had collapsed behind her desk and knocked over her coffee mug and a stack of textbooks. Her face was pale and sweaty, and her eyes kept rolling back. Someone screamed, and River ran to get the nurse while I called 911 from the classroom phone. The paramedics found a bottle of prescription pills scattered on the floor from her purse. Turns out Mrs. Brewer had been taking her daughter's ADHD medication before class to stay focused, but had been doubling and tripling the dose. Combined with her 6 cups of coffee a day and no food, her blood pressure had skyrocketed and caused her to have a seizure. The investigation revealed she'd been abusing stimulants for months to deal with grading and lesson planning. The school board revoked her teaching license, and she had to go to rehab.